It's another Friday, so let's answer some questions from our mailbag next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me, I'm based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB. I do some hosting, some co-hosting, and some producing as well. So I stay pretty busy in the sports world, as you know by now. But when you come to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you are getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. And on days like today, it is completely dedicated to you, the listener, to you, the follower. Whatever you want to talk about, that is what we are going to get into with a Mailbag Friday. I open it up on Twitter. Sometimes if it's on YouTube, it might be a little bit too late because I'm trying to balance out how many questions I can actually fit into the show. But if I don't answer them in today's episode, send them to me again, and I will try to answer them just directly to you on Twitter. Again, my handle is at JohnnyJ_15. We got over 30 questions today, so we're not going to waste any more time in getting into them. And we're going to kick it off with question number 1, which comes from Jason. He says, is Nelson Velazquez getting more unplayable than Hunter Renfroe? Well, unfortunately, this has been a realization over the last 4 to 5 weeks that Nelson Velazquez not only is a black hole in the lineup, but he's not even playing every day anymore. I mean, you look at the way that Matt Quatrero has worked him into the lineup. I would say we see Hunter Renfroe out there more than we do Nelson Velazquez now. And, Nelson Velazquez isn't the best fielder, and we thought the power in his bat was going to make him intriguing going into this year, but he has just not made the adjustments that you've needed him to. And, aside from that first 2-week start to the season, he has pretty much been unplayable. But more unplayable than Hunter Renfroe, I'm going to say no, just because Hunter Renfroe is hitting down in the 150s and 160s, and at least Nelson Velazquez is still over the Mendoza line. But it is really close right now because both aren't giving you much defensively. Maybe Hunter Renfroe's got that leg up because of his arm, but at the plate, just pick your poison. They've seemed pretty interchangeable over the last handful of weeks, and fortunately for the Royals, it hasn't cost them too terribly. This question comes from Bobby Witt Jr.'s bat. He says, if Royals end the season 500 or better, do you think they will go big in free agency this offseason? If so, who? I would need to go do a deep dive into the free agent market for 2024, 2025. I don't know if they would go huge. I don't know if they would break bank because the Royals also invested a lot of money into this team in multiple years to a handful of guys. They gave multiple years to Seth Lugo. They had the big time extension for Bobby Witt Jr., but a lot of guys will be off the books, like the 1-year deals to, Will Smith. I think Chris Stratton has a player option, if I'm not mistaken. Nick Anderson's a 1-year deal guy, I believe. But, it does feel like if they get that close, I'd imagine they'll spend big for somebody in the lineup because if the Royals don't make the postseason, I do not think it's going to be because of the pitching staff or the bullpen. I think it'll be because the offense runs out of gas. And some of the guys that have been picking up the slack for the lesser hitters, they're going to regress a little bit, and then you're going to see this offense sputter for longer than just a couple of games. That, to me, is how it all goes wrong. And knowing J.J. Picollo, knowing John Sherman, I feel like their fix would be we got to add a middle-of-the-lineup bat that we can count on to be a huge contributor behind Bobby Witt Jr., behind Vinny Pasquantino, and behind Salvador Perez. So that would be my guess, but I would need to go look at the free agent list a little bit deeper to get a better fit for who the Royals may go after this next offseason. This one comes from Beans Dad 85. Drew Waters, that's the question. I know a lot of people have been sending those questions my way about Drew Waters. He's been tearing it up in Omaha, and you may be asking yourself, why is he not in Kansas City? Well, it appears the Royals are not ready to punt on MJ Melendez or Hunter Renfroe or Kyle Isbell out there. And even though the offense hasn't been great, they love Isbell's defense. They're definitely not moving on from MJ Melendez or optioning him to AAA Omaha, barring any unforeseen changes. Hunter Renfroe feels like a likely option if things do not progress after May. Nelson Velasquez, who we just brought up as a maybe 90% likely candidate if things do not improve, of him getting optioned to Omaha and Drew Waters getting called back up. But right now, I think they just feel more inclined to stick with their guys in hopes they turn it around than to use Drew Waters as the fix. That's what I'm gathering at this point in time. I do think we see Drew Waters in Kansas City in the next month or so, but in the immediate, I think it would take an injury for him to get called up from Omaha. What's one move you would do to change the bottom of the order? Well, I just don't know if you can change too much at the bottom to significantly improve it unless you are adding different pieces in there. I think the guys you have in there right now, it doesn't really matter where you're hitting them. And if it does come down to just somebody bouncing back, I think you'll feel a little bit better about that 7 through 9 spot. But with the guys you have out there, I think it's just all about pitching matchups. I don't think they're going to play the same 3 guys in that spot every single night. We know how much Matt Quatraro changed up the lineup, but guys out there who they have, I don't see them, making any changes that are that drastic unless they were to add another piece. So for me, how would I change the bottom of the order? Adding in another piece through trade or maybe bringing up Drew Waters. But right now, I just don't see where you could place him to kind of fix the problems you were having with the lack of productivity there from the 7 through 9 spots. This one comes from Crypto Chanel. I win $15,000 or almost $1,600 if the Royals win the AL Central. How safe is my bet? Guardians and Twins are a problem. That is a big time payout. I hope you get it. I think everybody here hopes you would get that type of money. But to me, I wouldn't say it's a safe bet because there aren't many safe bets out there for division winners. Like I think the Dodgers are the safest bet to win the NL West, and that may be it. I mean, even the Braves, who I consider to be one of the best teams in baseball, they've got the Phillies to worry about. The Orioles could be a favorite in the American League side. They've got the Yankees to worry about. And, of course, in the AL Central, the Royals are right there with Minnesota, a game and a half back in Cleveland. They did lose to Chicago last night, but it's going to be maybe a 3-team race the entire summer. Unfortunately, I can't tell you that bet is safe. Hopefully you didn't put too much money down on it, but it sounds like it was a lot of money considering it's almost $16,000 for the payout. At least I think I read that right. $16,000 for the payout. So fingers crossed for you. Not a safe bet, but they're certainly in the running, which is maybe all you could have asked for when you placed that, back, I'm assuming before the start of the regular season. But fingers crossed for you, Crypto Chanel. Hope you get the big time payout. And we get to see Royals baseball in October 2024. Okay, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, still a ton of questions to get into. Probably have to go a little bit quicker, so we'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, want to give a shout out to one of the sponsors today in Stitch Fix. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good. That's what I get with Stitch Fix. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget, and they do all of the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. And if you're somebody like me who hates shopping, who hates looking for clothes, who hates spending a lot of money in general, they're going to have you covered here with Stitch Fix because you want people to be complimenting you on your appearance, that the new shirt looks good, the new sweatshirt, the new shorts, the new jeans, the new hat, whatever it could be. They just make it all that much easier on you. So style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $20 off on your first fix. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $20 off. Stitchfix.com/MLB. You must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Well, we still got 20 plus questions to go. We're going to have to go a little bit quicker on this. This one comes from Cole Reagan's Enjoyer. If the Royals are buyers, what are some names that come and go? Well, I know Bleacher Report put out an article of a potential trade with the Miami Marlins and the Royals acquiring Jazz Chisholm, but they would be sending, I think it was Blake Mitchell, Caden Wallace, and Frank Mozzicato, which to me, I think is an overpay. Jazz Chisholm is a fun and exciting guy. I don't know if he's worth 3 of your top 5 prospects in the system, especially your number 1 in Blake Mitchell. And I don't think the Royals would even entertain a trade idea like that. But you look at the team they're playing right now in the Angels, I think Joe Adell would be pretty intriguing. Taylor Ward, another guy there. If they wanted to go the bullpen route, I think it's Justin Lawrence in Colorado that I think would be a great addition. He's kind of not a submarine pitcher, but sidearm, but throws it anywhere from 95 to 98 with a sinker. I'd be curious what Colorado would be asking for if you went after someone like that. But to me, it's going to be a corner outfield bat or a bullpen arm if they are going to be buyers, which, considering they were interested in Luis Arraez, they may be more active than even I gave them credit for. So those are maybe right now just a handful of names I want to throw out there that the Royals could be interested in. You just got to keep eyeballing. Some of those teams are going to be way out of contention by the time you get to July. This one comes from Charles. Of all the free agents signed this offseason, who have we got the most bang for our buck for? Got to be Seth Lugo, right? I mean, Seth Lugo's been one of the best pitchers in all of baseball, and even though it was a 3-year, $45 million deal, he is absolutely over-exceeding the expectations that were set for him. I mean, he's been almost perfect when you think about it. I think he's made 8 starts, and 7 of them have been quality, and he was 2 outs away from a quality start in the one that he didn't get one. I mean, you can trust on Seth Lugo or trust Seth Lugo every 5th day. He's just been phenomenal, and I don't think anybody's been remotely close. Nobody in the bullpen. John Schreiber might be number 2, but still not doing nearly as good as Seth Lugo is at the front of that rotation. So to me, I really do feel like Seth Lugo is maybe going to regret a little bit from that, but even if he does, it's by far and away not only the best signing the Royals made this offseason, but one of the best signings anybody's made all offseason long. Lucas asked if you could trade for anyone to help this team make a real playoff push. Who would it be? Would it be worth it to go all in this season? To answer number 2 here, I don't think it's worth it to go all in. One, because your farm system is already depleted. You're trying to work your way back in. You're hoping this is year 1 of a multiple year window for Kansas City. To me, when you go all in, it's when you feel like that window is about to close. When you are going to put all your chips in. The Royals in 2015 put all their chips in to make sure 2014 wasn't going to repeat itself where they fell short in the World Series. And they got themselves a nice flag that hangs out there above the Hall of Fame at Kauffman Stadium. But to me, this is not the year to go all in. And I don't think the Royals would. I think they really trust who they got right now and might give them just a little bit of help because they've always said they owe it to guys that have put themselves in a good spot to get to the postseason. Bullpen arms, I think, would always make sense to get a little bit more high-powered swing and miss stuff in there. A corner outfield bat, you heard some of the names I had thrown out there. But I think I'll just echo that. You know, the guys that I just mentioned, that might be able to give them a little extra boost in the last couple months of the season. I know we're far away from that, but I don't blame fans for thinking that right now when you are 7 games over 500. This one comes from Wesley. With the Royals being potential buyers, who should our priority be? I'm just going to stick to a position here. I think you just need bullpen. Bullpen help is always going to be important when you're making a playoff push. And I think the Royals, even though they've been better of late, maybe not so much of late, but since their real collapse at the beginning of the year, they've been a fine bullpen. I think they need to try to shoot for being top 5 in all of baseball because that could be the difference in them being able to get past Cleveland and Minnesota at the very end or them falling short. So bullpen is what I would be prioritizing. This one comes from Jason. If you had a choice of a reliever to bring up right now, who would it be? You don't have to say which one you would send down. Walter Pennington, for sure. I think Walter Pennington deserves a shot. If I was to send somebody down, I think it'd be Tyler Duffy. But if they're going to keep Daniel Lynch up there when they activate Marsh today, then Daniel Lynch would be staying. But Walter Pennington just has such good stuff. He was fantastic in spring training. He's been fantastic this year. Will Klein, runner-up for that. I think those two at this point in time are my favorites to get up to Kansas City. And I don't think we'll have to wait much longer for those guys to get a shot in Kansas City. So that's who I would go with. Ben asked 2 questions here, totally hypothetical, but what would it take to get Mason Miller to Kansas City? And number 2, could a trade for an outfitter that actually hit the ball come soon? Mason Miller ain't coming to Kansas City. They do not have the resources. I think they are going to be giving a really steep asking price to everybody out there because Mason Miller has years of control, and he's right now, I think, the best reliever in baseball. So the Royals aren't getting him. They don't have anybody they could trade in the minor leagues to go get him. They would probably have to trade some of their really valuable pieces at the major league level, and they're not willing to do that for a bullpen guy. Number 2, I would say that they're likely looking for help out there. I don't have inside information on that, but I would imagine if they were interested in Luis Arraez, they're looking for bats that can help this lineup out a little bit. And I would guess it would be an outfielder because they like the way their entire infield is playing right now. So I would still be waiting on July or something like that. They could always make a move in June, but I just don't see anything happening at this point in time. This question comes from Tyrone. Would Serpa ever get the nod to be the team's closer? No, I don't think so unless the bullpen was completely depleted. My rankings, I think it would go MacArthur, then Stratton, then Schreiber, then Will Smith before we get to Serpa. I think they really like the role that Serpa's in, and they're not going to change that up anytime soon. So unless it was a emergency situation, I do not see Angel Serpa getting the closer role for the Kansas City Royals. Spoons asks, if it's not too late, I'll be at the Columbia Fireflies game tomorrow. Any players I should keep an extra eye on? Well, hopefully Blake Walters is pitching. I actually don't know if he is, but Blake Walters is the guy that I really want to see in person. He is somebody that I just think is so electrifying to watch. Even if he's not throwing, I feel like just maybe get out there early enough you can see him play catch because he is just the guy I want to keep an eye on all the way through his progression at the minor league level because I think he might be the best pitching prospect the Royals have. And he's only 18 years old, but from what we heard down in spring training, by far and away, an elite prospect in their eyes and definitely can be a top 100 guy maybe in a couple years or so. Last question we'll do here before we move on to our final segment of questions. MJ Believer asking a wild card series, how confident would you be in Reagans, Lugo, and Singer in the rotation right now? Hard not to feel pretty damn confident. I mean, I love Reagans in game 1. I love Seth Lugo in game 2. Both have been fantastic on the road. If the Royals were to be in the road team in a wild card series, and Brady Singer, I mean, I would take him over Michael Walker right now. So that would be your best chance. It'd be a puncher's chance, but I'd have 85 to 90% confident, but it's also so early on and you don't know what this rotation or how those guys will be pitching at the end of the season. But right now, I'd feel pretty good if they were the 3 guys going in a wild card series, which now is a best of 3. Okay, we're going to move on to our final set of questions. Before we do that, let's give a shout out to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, we're going to wrap up the show with the last little bit of questions that we have, so don't go anywhere. You're listening to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Before our last round of questions, want to give a shout out to one of the sponsors today in Policygenius. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. Talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step. Easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB or click the link in the description that we give you to get your free life insurance quotes to see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB. Also, with Mother's Day right around the corner, you can make sure she's taken care of with DoorDash. You want to make your mom smile? Start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from brands she loves, delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Moms are a gift, so give her the best this Mother's Day. You can get those gifts as thoughtful as she is with DoorDash. Select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to the best of tech to self-care essentials and more. delivered right to her door. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order and up to $15 when you spend 15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with Locked On MLB. That's Locked On MLB, LOCKEDON MLB. Order using DoorDash today. Those terms apply. All right, let's answer our final question, starting with Aiden's. With Dyron Blanco's performance today, should he be the short-term solution and taking Hunter Renfroe's place in right field? We talked about that in yesterday's podcast episode. It's certainly a possibility. I just don't know if Dyron Blanco can be an everyday player, but I also asked the question, even if he's not, is he more valuable than Hunter Renfroe? I think you could make that case, especially after what you saw last night. Phil asks, Vinny has 9 times greater WAR this year compared to last with the exact same OPS and 100 fewer ABs. Why? Because of his defense. His defense has made him far more valuable. Defensive runs saved, outs above average. He could maybe be a Gold Glove winner at some point in his career, but that's exactly why you are seeing a much higher WAR this season, because of how good he's been defensively. This one comes from Dynasty Lethal Protector. Do you think it's smart to do a 1-1 swap for Hunter Renfroe and Tommy Pham? I don't think the Red Sox would take Hunter Renfroe for Tommy Pham. I think they're going to want to get prospects in a deal like that. So no, I don't see that trade being very likely, but it is all right to dream a little bit in a way that the Royals could maybe get Tommy Pham for this lineup. EK13 asks, how can I get paid to do nothing like Hampson does? Seriously though, how close are we to seeing him be DFA'd or traded to make room for one of the guys coming up? Well, I mean, the Royals really like their utility guys, and he did get on base 3 times last night. So even though he got picked off at third base, not a bad game. Honestly, it was his best game offensively after getting the start in center field last night. I wouldn't say he's that close to being DFA'd. I'm sorry to say that, but he doesn't play enough where I think the Royals feel a desperate need to DFA him, I guess is the best way to put it. So to me, if you're waiting on it, it's probably not happening anytime soon unless somebody forces him off the roster like a Nick Lofton or Drew Waters. This one comes from Chance. What outfitters could we be in on down the stretch? I'll just kind of repeat what I said in some of the other questions. You could look at a utility guy like Taylor Ward, Joe Adell for the Angels, Jazz Chisholm maybe. If you wanted to look in Colorado, maybe Brendan Doyle would be somebody to look at there. Just keep your eye on some of the teams that are going to be tanking the rest of the way. Tommy Pham actually would be another one. The Chicago White Sox, if the Royals could get it done with all the Royals influence that's there in Chicago, but maybe not the biggest pool of guys are going to be available, but I'm sure the Royals will be trying to make some calls the closer we get to the trade deadline. He asks, is this year's momentum and the financial investment of the owners a one-off, or do you think we can continue to build like Baltimore? Well, Baltimore built through their minor league system. The Royals have built through spending money in this year. It's still too early to tell if this is going to be a successful formula. I think we can take away enough through 40 games. Tonight will be game number 40. They're not like Baltimore, but I do think this is a sign that the Royals can be competitive if John Sherman puts money into the team. Because right now, they are showing that they can be a playoff team. And even if it is 40 games, they've got everybody invested again and thinking that postseason baseball is a possibility. So I don't think it's a one-off, because if you're going to be willing to spend and you can build around the stars that you have, like Bobby Witt Jr. and Cole Reagans and Vinny Pasquantino and Michael Garcia, you might be able to have some success. And right now in 2024, the Royals are having that success. Brennan asks, here's one. Why does it seem like this year we have had multiple different announcers? I know they are probably in a rotation, but it seems like every few nights it's someone besides Ryan and Hud, and he sort of thought would be cool. I just think they're trying to get guys like Mike Sweeney and Jeremy Guthrie and Monty and just different pairings, and Jake Eisenberg, of course, just getting different pairings just to give some guys nights off and also see how successful they can be. And maybe just a different angle for listeners at home that want to hear what some of the other former players have to say. So that's what I think the goal is right now, just early on in the season, getting a little bit of a rotation of mixing and matching as many of the announcers as they can. But if you like it, let me know on YouTube. If you don't, also let me know on YouTube or on Twitter as well. Matt asks, how long until they click the Waters and Lofton's button? Hampson is awful, and both MJ and Nelly need to reset. After seeing the Chisholm trade article online, what would your package be? I'd be okay with Wallace, Jensen, and Cruz, and a lottery guy. It'd suck, but I'd be okay with it. I just don't see them sending MJ Melendez down for a reset. Nelly Velasquez could be getting a reset sometime soon. And as for the Chisholm trade, I I don't know if I'd want to part ways with Caden Wallace. Definitely not Carter Jensen. Carter Jensen has been one of the better hitting prospects in the system. I'm just not as high on Jazz Chisholm, maybe as some people are out there. I think he's fine. I just don't know if he really transforms the lineup and what some people are expecting him to do. He's a fun player. He's an exciting player, but I don't know if he's worth, 4 or 5 prospects in your system. Wang Chung for you asks, more likely at a bullpen arm or a bat at the deadline. I'm going to go bullpen arm there just because I think they're easier and less expensive at the deadline. This one comes from Joseph. Unlikely, but it would be fun to get Ben Joyce from the Angels. I've talked about the firepower they need in the bullpen, and that would certainly be a fun firepower arm to go after and get, but he's got years of control. He's young. Injuries can always be a concern, but I just don't know if I'd see the Angels making a trade like that. Gold Glove Gordo asks, looking forward to possible trade targets. What do you think is targeted first, outfielder bat or bullpen help? Again, I'm going to just reiterate, that's going to be bullpen help for me, less expensive come the trade deadline. RB Carr asks, early draft buzz as the Royals are high on Griffin, the prep shortstop from Mississippi, and Hagen Smith, the lefty ace from Arkansas. Preference between the two, other favorites. Yeah, I think Griffin's an absolute stud, and if they wanted to really get a high ceiling guy, I think he would be the pick. If you want a fast riser, I think Hagen Smith will not really have any trouble moving through the ranks, but also outside Asa Lacy would not have any trouble when that happens. So the college arm route can always be a little bit scary, a little bit shaky, going back to 2018 with the Royals, but I would much rather take Griffin in that spot. Austin asked, do you think the Guardians will keep up their pace for a while, or could they slip and give some leeway to the Royals to take first soon? Well, they lost to Chicago last night, so they gave up a little bit of ground, but that's always a tough team to put away. I'll never see them really bottoming out this year. They might slip and fall into third place, but it might be because of injuries. I mean, not having Shane Bieber is big. If they lose somebody like a Steven, well, they lost Stephen Kwan to the 10-day IL, but, Josh Naylor, Jose Ramirez, those are guys I just don't think they can afford to be without in their lineup, which nobody can really be that good without some of their best players in the lineup. KC Sports Fan asks, how long is Nelson's leash until he gets called down or DFA? They're not going to DFA him. They still have a lot of high hopes for him. But I would say if this doesn't improve in the next 2 weeks, I'd imagine he does get a reset in Omaha. Moyer asks, is Blanco the answer for the outfield struggles? His career numbers in 178 games suggest we need to give him a legit shot. And after last night, seems like he wants it too as well. He could be. I think it's worth a shot. We talked about in yesterday's podcast episode. I would love to see him get a little bit more playing time. But if they are going to go for a permanent fix, I'd rather them go the trade route. Jackson asked, what are the chances Taylor Ward makes the trip to Seattle with us? Low, but we also just talked about him being a trade candidate, and I would certainly love to see Taylor Ward in the Royals lineup at some point, but probably not after the Royals finish up the series in Anaheim on Sunday. And lastly, Joel Edward Allen, asked, what do we do about Nelson Velasquez? Also, I'm ready to move on from Hunter Renfroe. This is not a question. I've gotten that feel from a lot of the listeners of late. For Nelson Velasquez, I'd see if he can try to turn things around over the next 2 weeks, but if he can't, then he probably does need that reset in Omaha. Well, that is going to do it for another edition of Mailbag Friday and another edition of Locked On Royals. Thank you all to listening in and sending in your questions. I've been your host, Jack Johnson, and be sure to always follow me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15 or find us on wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. We're on Odyssey and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. Before we say goodbye for the weekend, a shout out to Locked On Sports, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you with all the top sports stories, the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Well, you have a great weekend watching the final 3 games. I know it's the West Coast, and they'll have Seattle after that, so a lot of late-night baseball, but hopefully winning baseball for the Kansas City Royals. But until Monday, you take it easy, Kansas City.